Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. I am sitting here today with Curtis Voelker. Curtis, we've obviously already had you on the podcast before. You're now a podcast veteran, and we appreciate you taking time out of your extremely busy schedule to join us here with the Nightly News Podcast today. Curtis, welcome.
Thank you very much.
And as you may have heard the last time Curtis was on, obviously during the fall school sessions, he is busy running all over the state. We're just happening to catch him between two major trips, so we really appreciate Curtis joining us today. We're also joined by communications manager and nightly news correspondent Daylin Davis. Daylin, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It is certainly a pleasure. I believe this is actually the first time that we've had you on the show. Daylin, one of the reasons that we had you on, that we're having you on today with Curtis, is because you recently got back from the first annual men's retreat here at Central Penn College, put together by Curtis and Dillon Epler. So we want to get your commentary about the trip, maybe ask you guys a few questions where you came up with the idea for the retreat, maybe tell us about some of the great things that you learned and maybe some of the things that you're going to take away into your future life. So do you just want to give us, maybe both of you, but you give us some feedback here. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the retreat? What were some of the things that you guys did? Where did you go? What were some of the initiatives that you wanted to do with this men's retreat?
Sure. So before I say anything, I'd like to say thank you. Definitely have to say thank you to Adrian Thoman, our awesome activities director, our Central Penn Education Foundation. Without Adrian and our foundation, I don't know if this retreat, this leadership retreat, would have been possible. Adrian did so much prep work for Dillon and I, and then it was up to Dillon and myself to execute the actual camp. And the foundation supported us financially to make sure that these students had this amazing opportunity. So, meeting and talking with Adrian, she shared that for the past few years, there has been a women's retreat, and now she felt it was time for the men to have a turn. So she met with Dillon and myself, and we started to look over timeline, what do we want our students to take away, and the mindset that Dillon and I came up with was a theme of leaving a legacy. Over a night stay at Daikon Wilderness Center in Boiling Springs, we decided that we wanted to have a small group of male students that may have been involved in some clubs or activities or sports, but still have potential to do more, that needed that extra little push, if you will, to really start making a greater impact in their school and their community. So we took a look at some of the students and we started mapping out the day. We wanted some team building exercises, but we also wanted some aspects of personal reflection. So the students mainly got two main sessions, legacy sessions, if you will, looking at personal goals, professional goals, what they plan to give back to their school and community, and how they really plan to make an impact in their lives over the next 5-10 years and so forth and so on. And throughout that, we got to play some basketball. We had a nice little campfire. So it was really a good team building and bonding exercise, if you will. And I'm sure Daylin's going to share this as well. But a lot of the guys saw each other on campus. They knew of each other, but they didn't know each other. And when I say know each other, know their names, know where they're from, know their interests, their passions, what they're studying, and things like that. So they really got to know each other on a much deeper level. Daylin?
You couldn't have said it any better. I just want to, again, thank you, Curtis and Dillon, and again, Paul Miller for having me. And also the Scholarship Foundation and Adrian Thoman. Again, like you said, without them, none of this would be possible. I enjoyed it. The first annual men's retreat, the Daikon Wilderness, Center, they showed us great hospitality. They definitely made sure we were comfortable and enjoyed ourselves. And I also want to thank them. I definitely, had a great experience, like you said, with the activities we've done with the high ropes, walking across them tight ropes. It was pretty exciting. I had a little fear, but like you said, with the extra push from the other guys and you and Dillon, it definitely helped me a lot to, overcome that small fear.
I would have been a tremendous fear. I wouldn't go as far to say I have a fear of heights, but you guys are talking about doing zip lining and doing the high ropes course. Boy, that doesn't sound like something that I would be able to just get out there and do. So don't undersell yourself here. There's nothing wrong with being a little skeptical about doing things at high heights. I mean, fear of heights is a pretty common fear. So tell me, you'd never done anything like that before?
Oh, no, this is my very first time doing anything like this. And which, again, Adrian Thoman, she, reached out to me multiple times in regards to, just get out, have fun, try it, something new. And I just figured, why not get out to know more about the guys who had joined us, and also Curtis and Dillon. Yeah, just trying new things and trying to be a little more open-minded towards, other aspects and perspectives of things.
What's one of the best things in my mind about college? We talk about this all the time. I talk about this in the classroom. College is one of these places where you get to learn more about yourself. And doing something like this, it's out of your comfort zone. It's not what you're used to. It's not with your normal clique of friends, based on what you were saying, I think is really a way to sort of take that next step in your leadership potential. Now, Curtis, obviously you're a campus leader here. Can we look back in the past about what were some of the things and how did you build this leadership style that you had that you're now instilling to our current students?
Sure. So a lot of my experiences really started in high school. I was very involved in clubs, activities, and sports. And when I came to Central Penn, I wanted to keep that same style, I wanted to keep that same schedule and build upon it. So when I came to Central Penn, I was student government president as a freshman, was involved in student government, a number of other clubs, and I began my public speaking career, if you will, here on campus where I really got to hone in on my skills. And Dillon and I were actually roommates here at Central Penn. So we are alumni, we now work at the college, and we had many different discussions on our love and passion for Central Penn and how in the future could we give back to students like Daylin and the students and the guys at the leadership retreat. And this definitely hit something on all points that we've discussed. Definitely was a fun event that we were looking forward to. So yeah, definitely. Dillon said it best when we chatted about it. Dillon kind of really thought about the night, the overstay, and things like that in the camp. He shared that, I have a little bit more of a structure to my personality, and he's more of a little bit of the fun one, a little bit, and as Daylin laughs there. And I think that's the kind of combo that you need, the mesh that you need. And again, that just comes from the different life experiences from myself and Dillon. And I think that really resonated with the guys at the camp, where I started things off and shared exactly this. Dillon and I are graduates. This is something we've really been looking forward to. We're not just doing this because we're staff members. We're not just doing this because it's part of a job. We want to do this because we want to do this. It's going to fulfill something that we've longed to do for Central Penn students. And hopefully that mindset is rubbing off on the rest of the guys in terms of giving back to their fellow graduates.
One of the things, too, that I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up on this podcast today is, and I hope that you see this, Daylin, in your day-to-day interactions with faculty and staff here. The bottom line is I don't know any educator that does this job for the money or the prestige. We do it because we legitimately and genuinely enjoy helping people. And I know I've shared with you, Daylin, in class. I really struggled my first year of college, and I was very fortunate to have a gentleman by the name of Dr. James Laux, who I still think about all the time, and I actually email still. We still stay in contact. He took an interest in me, and he saw potential that I had, and I see so much potential here in our students. And it was that next step that he sort of took me under his wing and helped me make these next couple steps. It's so important to understand that I wouldn't be here without him, and I want to pay it forward. And it sounds like you're all about the same kind of thing. We do this because we care, and we want to see you all of our students succeed. There does just have to be a sort of meeting in the middle type of thing. We can't hold your hand the whole time. But there's no one that works in higher education that doesn't genuinely want to help people. Daylin, I have a question here for you. Obviously, you're going into your third season as a Central Penn Knight men's basketball player.
Yes.
We've had some unbelievable runs in your first 2 years in the tournament, the USCAA tournament. Of course, we've talked about the potential of being able to live stream some basketball games this year, and that's something that we are heavily planning on, so I look forward to doing on that. But the question is, to circle back to the first annual men's leadership retreat, you are now one of the veterans, if you will, on the Central Penn Knights basketball team. Is there anything, or what can you take away from this leadership retreat that when you step out onto that court here, I'm sure you guys are already practicing.
Yes.
When you step out on that court, what can you bring to your freshman and sophomore nights from what you learned in the leadership conference?
We have a great group of guys coming in who are willing to work. Guys like Ryan, John, Joe, Zola. These guys, like over the past couple of weeks, we've been starting to get things in motion and starting to have that basketball season atmosphere. As far as me being a leader and the captain of the team this year, the goal is to honestly win a national title. And by doing so, I as a leader, I feel as though I have to give that extra work ethic rather than settling for what I think is work ethic. I feel as though I have to do more and definitely set the example and set the tone each and every single practice from the jump, honestly. From being the first in sprints, making sure the guys who are not necessarily, being as though they're freshmen, making sure I take them under my wing and guide them along, because it's a long season. And it definitely goes by fast. But just to ensure that, from my experience, from my past experience, to give these guys, a base knowledge of what to expect this season. And we go along from there.
The one piece of advice I would love to pass along to you, because, just being here and being a part of the nightly news, I consider myself somewhat at least a leader of people in the communications department. Best piece of advice is you teach by example.
Right.
You do everything you expect from them and more. And it's funny because I always give, I'm sure you'll be the first to tell you, people that come in late to my class all the time. I give them a hard time.
Yes.
But I only do that. Have you ever seen me late for a class?
Not at all.
And I'm not. This is just something that I personally believe in. I've never been late for a class because I wouldn't want my students to be late. No, look, things happen every once in a while. I get it. But if it's habitual, that's when I start getting upset. So what my advice to you is, everything that you expect from them, you do too. And that's where a lot of these younger kids are really going to give you more respect and look up to you, because you're holding yourself accountable. And that's something, unfortunately, so many people, not even just students, people in general don't understand. It's the do as I say, not as I do. And I don't buy into that in the least bit. Again, Daylin, I can't. We so look forward to the season and seeing what you can come with in a bigger role here. I just have a couple of more questions here for you. One of the things that you had mentioned in our pre-show meeting is that you did a couple of different sessions during the first annual men's leadership retreat. I was wondering if you could talk about some of those sessions specifically and maybe just give a little bit more of a sense of what, set us up for that 24-hour period. Maybe walk us through what you did during that time.
Sure. So in terms of the sessions, we had 2 legacy sessions to fit with our theme of leaving your legacy. And the 2 sessions comprised of having the students, having the guys take a look at their personal goals, professional goals, what they'd like to accomplish on campus, off campus, what do they want to accomplish in the next 10 years, what are some strengths and weaknesses they have, what are they involved in, how could they grow that. And the second session was really taking all the answers and putting them together, and I had them create what we're calling a Central Penn legacy letter. So after everything they've shared, at the end of the day, when you come back from this retreat, and no matter how much time you have left on campus, or even after as an alumni or a graduate, how do you plan to leave your legacy? What is your theme? What are you hoping to accomplish? And they all came up with different themes. Some really want to push club involvement. Some really want to push helping students find their voice, to communicate properly, to speak out, to make sure their voice is heard. And some are just really there as a source of mentorship and guidance. And Daylin was actually one of the students who shared his legacy letter at one of our local leader lecture series. And that also brings up another component of leadership in terms of communication, public speaking. Definitely something that leaders, you need to communicate with your followers. And more of a man side, you got to keep your word. And really, it's not just for men. Anyone and everyone keep their word, but you have that pressure on your shoulders. If you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. So you're now professing your legacy letter in front of that entire audience. So it really took some courage and some bravery to share everything that they had in that letter. So that was the legacy sessions. The other session that we had was led by Dillon on conflict management. So, Daylin is a basketball player, or he's also a leader in a club. He's also a leader on the campus. And in all of these different places, conflict can be present. Conflict is all around us every single day. How do we navigate that? How do we learn properly how to communicate with other people that may have a very different mindset, who may be very angry at one moment? These are things that they can take with them long after graduation for their families, their careers, whatever it may be. So those were mainly the sessions. Daylin, do you have anything you'd like to add with the sessions?
The sessions were very informative. I definitely took a lot. The conflict management, where you, like you said, had in relations to life, family, even career, jobs, athletics, anything. What I got out of that is to be mindful of other people's perspective as far as conflicts when dealing with them. Like I said, being mindful and just have some type of thought towards their side of the conflict, and to somewhat compromise and come to some solution. The legacy letter and my legacy letter, I definitely expressed how coming in to the men's retreat, I was a little uncomfortable and skeptical about what are we gonna do? How is this going to be? But over the course of time, starting to settle down, because the ride wasn't but thank God only but 30 minutes,
right.
In that small van. But like I said, over the course of time, just was starting to be thankful, just being surrounded. And I got off campus, got a chance to just get off campus, get away from academics for a while, just dealing with campus and my assignments and things like that. And got a chance to, like I said, meet a couple guys who I've seen probably at least once or twice around campus. And I actually got a chance to get to know them, guys like Kane, Paul Jones, Sean, just a couple of names that I, who also attended the men's retreat. And we got a chance to connect and express how, as far as men, what we want to do to succeed throughout Central Penn, and how we do want to give back to the community.
And Daylin and I have a little system set up for if there's ever a future staff-student basketball tournament.
Oh, yeah.
I set the pick, let Daylin take the ball to the rim. We're good to go.
Yeah, Curtis, not to mention that Curtis, he's definitely a competitor. if I didn't learn anything over the weekend, he definitely displayed at all times. You give your best effort. It was friendly. It was a friendly game, and shared a couple laughs, but at the same time, that competitive spirit was still there. And I definitely, I definitely looked at that as far as taking that to as far as basketball, organized basketball, coming for this up and coming season. Curtis definitely, paved the way for me for that.
One of the thing that I want to chat with you guys about before we head on out of here for the day is really when we say leave our legacy, because that's something that I've heard you guys say multiple times. Daylin, how do you, or maybe if you want to talk about the letter that you wrote, or maybe just some things that you've sort of learned since then, what are some things that if you were given advice to, we have a whole new incoming crop of freshmen this term,
right?
If you could just maybe have a moment or have their ear for a moment and talk about leaving that legacy, what would you say to them?
As a freshman, man, it will be tough, trying to get out of that comfort zone, but be willing to do it, be willing to make new friends, be willing to reach out and build connections with professors, the staff, and faculty. Definitely, join clubs. Don't shy away from not getting involved. Because, a lot of students today talk about, we don't have this to do on campus. We don't have that to do. We should do this. But if you actually, try and reach out and things like the men's retreat or even the women's retreat, there are, fun activities that we are able to do.
Well, even just getting involved in something like SGA or even the nightly news to get your voice out there can have tremendous repercussions as well for the good. Now, Curtis, to you as an alumni, as someone who's worked here for quite some time now, when you talk about leaving your legacy, What does that mean to you?
For me, it really is this theme of the men's leadership retreat in terms of the mindset of helping the students grow. At the end of the day, it's all about the students and their personal and professional growth. So I had my time here as a student for bachelor's and master's. I've grown personally and professionally. I've made these connections. This is still home. This is family. Now I want to bring my experiences that I've learned from and bring it to the table for really all students. So I'd say leaving my legacy is all about helping the students here at Central Penn learn, grow, and hopefully live better lives.
That's absolutely tremendous, and I really appreciate you guys chatting about this. Now, I guess as we end almost every interview, what's the future of the leadership retreat? Is this going to be happening again in the future?
Yes, we had a resounding yes to have it again. The guys definitely encouraged us to do it. Dylan and Adrian and I sat down and kind of went through the process. We liked the time frame. We liked the number of students. We felt it was small enough, intimate enough. We are entertaining the idea of maybe opening up to a few more students, but not too many more, maybe increasing the day by one more day. And we're also thinking about some different sessions, maybe some cooking classes, maybe some other personal development sessions, because you can't eat out every day. So,
well, I'll tell you what, I would love to be involved with this, and I know that I don't want to call myself any type of chef, but I worked in the restaurant business for 20 years,
okay.
And I'd be interested in coming down and helping out with that for sure, even just a few basic things just to help our students out. Because I love to cook, and that's one of the passions I have outside of helping people, is cooking for my family. In fact, the kids, they actually kind of like it. They actually, now that they're getting a little bit older, now they're helping, now they're learning to cook, and it's fun because, everyone else, we know a couple people who don't cook and they just go out to eat every night, and it's unhealthy, and it's just a bonding experience that we can have, and it's something else too that I think is a very important skill for students to have. So please, when you're planning this, I'd love to be in the loop, and I'd love to help out any way I can for the next men's leadership retreat.
Before we go, Paul, I just wanted to say thank you for having me.
You're welcome anytime, my friend.
And I know you had mentioned the story of your past professor who had, saw the potential in you. And I'm not sure if you or not, we remember the time, I think it was spring term. We had spoke multiple times in regards to, class and assignments and things like that. And I'm not sure if you remember, and this is actually a quote from you to me. You said you had all the faith in the world in me, and that really meant a lot to me. And I definitely took that into consideration as far as my future and leaving my legacy at Central Penn. That definitely encouraged me to do things like this with the men's retreat with Dillon and Curtis. And I just want to say that really did help a lot for me and definitely encouraged me to do my best as far as academics and things like that. And I had something for you, if you don't.
Sure.
Just a simple card of showing my appreciation from me to you.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you. And I got to tell you, Daylin, and I will absolutely open this as soon as we're done here. I have to be perfectly honest with you. I've had you in class several times now, and we had a really awesome opportunity in our Com 270 class to do the Nightway.
Right.
And we did a guest star spot on the Nightway, and I'll tell you something right now. I, for one of the very first times, saw you make a gigantic leap in, obviously this is what you want to do. You want to be in broadcasting. I have never seen you as happy and as organized and ready to go. I mean, I've really just over this last term seen you come a tremendous amount, and I just hope that to see that continue. And I know that, right now we're obviously in a end of the term here. Obviously, when you guys are going to be hearing this will be the beginning of the next term. But I just wish you the best here the rest of this term. And we got this great basketball season coming up.
Yes, sir.
It's going to make it even tougher in the classroom. But I know, and I really think that even just since you've gotten back from this, I've already seen a major difference in your attitude for the excellent. So thank you very much, my friend.
No problem.
Curtis, real quick before we get out of here, I did just want to thank you again for talking about the competitive nature of Curtis. I This is the first time I've ever really done this on the podcast, but obviously when we had the cornhole tournament here, I did run my mouth and say that I would take on whoever the winners of the tournament were. We did do that. We not only were victorious, I will say that I played okay. But Curtis was, who knew? And we had spoken and we had talked about this, and he's like, oh, yeah, I've played. I'm like, oh, yeah, I've played. Let's just do it. It was unreal how amazing Curtis was, and we were victorious, and I did go ahead and we got Brian and Ian a pizza gift card, so hopefully they enjoy some pizza on us all in good fun. So Curtis, it cannot be stated how much Central Penn College appreciates you, appreciates your leadership and passion that you have for our institution. And, man, we thank you so much. The Nightly News thanks you for being you. And like I said, if there's any way I can help out future men's leadership retreats, I would be honored to do so.
Thank you guys so much. I guess all that's really left to say is go Knights.
Yes.
And Daylin, star player, star in the classroom. Now you're really coming out of your shell with the Nightly News. You've still got some time here to leave that legacy. So every day I want you to think about, what can I do today to leave my legacy here on college?
I will. Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, sir, and thank you both for joining us today. All right, so for Professor Paul Miller, that would be me. For Curtis Voelker, for Daylin Davis, this is the Nightly News Podcast, and we'll be right back with Dillon Epler talking about the general election on November 7th.
What's up? This is Dr. Linda Fedrizzi-Williams, and you are listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
Welcome to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Paul Miller, sitting here at the Nasir Harris Podcast Studio at the Boyer House of Central Penn College. We're so very fortunate to be joined by Dillon Epler, the Associate Residence Life Coordinator here at Central Penn College. Dillon, welcome to the program.
Paul, thanks for having me today.
You're very welcome. Actually, this is your second appearance on the show. And one of the things and one of the ways that we actually got to know each other here in the first place is, I believe it was it last year when you did the Common Hour and you outlined all of the different presidential candidates, and just really why we're here today is because of the way that we both feel, and it's just go vote. Now, while this will be a political podcast, we're not going to advocate for one or another. That is not our job. I am certainly not qualified necessarily to break down some of the specific things that are going to be on the ballot, such as the state Supreme Court and things of that nature. I will leave that to other political avenues to do so. But still, we have several things that we would like to touch on here today. First of all, we're going to talk about what students can do and how students can get involved, and also what Dillon's office is doing to promote voting here on campus. And we're also going to talk about some of the other issues going on right now, talking about potentially moving Election Day, talking about why voter turnout is low in non-midterm or presidential elections, and also some of the early polls for 2018. So we've got a full slate here, Dillon.
Absolutely. So I think it was great that you, whatever it was last year again, invited me into your media and politics class. That was an awesome experience, and I hope to do it again if you'd be so kind to ask me. Your students were wonderful. They asked good questions. And like you said, as professionals in higher education, regardless of the subject that we teach or the field that we're in, I think it's very, very important to try our best to remain neutral, even though we have our personal political affiliations. I think it's really good to remain neutral and be Switzerland in really be Switzerland in these types of matters. But yeah, I think it's also good to really share with the individuals, with the students, what it is to be active in politics and civic events and community service. And there's a lot of things on the agenda here today which I look forward to talking about.
Well, before we move on, I do know that we're hoping that the media and politics class will be running in the winter term, so we certainly will have you back at that time. But really, if you ask anybody that was in that class with me, that's really all I was saying. Now, certainly in private or after class, people might ask what my specific thoughts thoughts were on some of the issues. And of course, I would share them with them at that time, but I never made it a purpose to have an agenda, because really my overall thesis of the entire class was just get involved. We all have a right, and many of people, unfortunately, over the years have died for the right for us to have a vote. And the fact that even in a presidential election, we're only getting about just over half of the eligible voters in the country to get out there, that's a little troubling to me. And that's one of the things that we aim to make a change on for, hopefully, next year, because unfortunately this year we missed the deadline so if you're listening to this at this point and you're not registered to vote, unfortunately you will not be able to vote in this year's election, but that doesn't mean that you can't get a jump on next year. All right, Dillon, we're going to start off by talking about some of the things that you have going on here on campus for the students. We're going to start off with a very student-centered approach. The first question is, and this is probably the softball of these questions, is why is it important for our students to vote?
So, great question. So, I think it's extremely important for our students to vote. Across the country, colleges and universities have always been a hub for political action, for political action movements. And I mean, if you go back to the 1960s in Berkeley, or you go back to the 1940s with Harvard and Yale and all these types of Ivy League schools, they were always very, very engaged in political, civic, and community action movements. And since then, it's kind of continued. That tradition has continued on college campuses. If I may not quote but paraphrase Romeo, he always says that college campuses are one of the places where diversity comes together. And what I call it is this cornucopia effect, this beautiful cornucopia effect, where you have this big large cornucopia and it's just flowing with diversity out of everything. So people from different backgrounds and cultures and religions and no religious faith and whatever it is, and they bring their politics with them too. And so it's good to discuss things with each other, and it's good for faculty and staff to be able to discuss in, of course, a professional and neutral way, the importance of politics, the importance of civic events and community. And it really, in voting and being engaged, it really affects people's lives, especially college students. I think of just a couple things, on the national or state level, especially on the national level with student loan debts and student loan forgiveness and Pell Grants and those wonderful Stafford loans and all these types of things. And people say, well, this stuff doesn't affect me. And actually it really does, and it affects you in a very vital way. It may not affect your daily life, but really it does affect your daily life. So these are things that we need to be mindful of, and I think that if we can just try to get the ball moving and rolling and talk to them about this, it would be so good, because really it's the student, and we want students to bring us questions. We want students to bring us questions and say, hey, I'm interested in this, and this is a candidate that I'm looking at, or this is a movement that I'm looking at, this is a political party I'm looking at, on and on and on. And if they bring those to us and we can help facilitate that, maybe one, maybe two, maybe three, will become 50 to 100 students that are really, really active. And we're so close. I've always said this to faculty and staff and my friends when I went here at Central Penn. I always said, oh my God, we're so close to Harrisburg. And, there's so much engagement, whatever major you are in, you can become engaged politically and civically. So I just think it's so important for them to be, really passionate about something that's has been a college and university tradition for absolutely years in the United States.
Now, obviously, and we'll talk about this and refer to this just a little bit more detail at the end of the show, obviously 2018 is what we call the midterm elections, and there's a lot of major races going on right now for 2018. Now, before we started the show today, we started talking a little bit more about the opportunity to volunteer with some of these different races. And I wanted to ask you, can you talk a little bit about how students can benefit from volunteering on a political campaign from now until the next election?
Sure, absolutely. So there's a lot of political campaigns coming up this time around, both statewide and nationally. And it's really, really important for a person regardless of what major you are, but especially if you're communications, legal studies, business, really any others. But those top three are really, really some great majors. If you're in that major, great majors to really get involved with politics and really get involved in maybe some internship or some volunteer hours or something like that, community service. It's very, very interesting because you can actually, that could be a resume builder for you. It could be a career builder for you, and something that can really boost you up. Maybe you're not passionate about politics, but it'll really give you, if you want to write a press release or you want to write a press brief, or you want to help somebody with some type of website thing, or you want to help somebody, maybe they're looking at putting forward some type of business-friendly policies for the state or the nation, or maybe they're looking at reforming criminal justice reform. Maybe they might ask you to write a memo if you're a legal studies major, really help them out. And bring all these things, so bring what you are bring your major to whatever it is that the politician is wanting, or the person who's seeking to be a politician is wanting. So I think it's there's a lot of opportunity.
Well, the thing is, too, in my personal opinion, and I've done some work with some campaigns, and I've certainly been in touch with a lot, trying to find some internship opportunities for our students. One of the things that I've noticed is usually political campaigns, they won't turn you away. If you want to come and volunteer, they will make sure that you are utilized to whatever interests you have, maybe what background you have. And that's where I always try to put out there to the students, like, even if you're only just canvassing for a few hours, right? Just that opportunity to work in an office setting like that, or even out in the public, be in front of people, so many advantages overall long term to everybody and their resume. So you said about being a resume builder, but it also might be an interesting way to open doors, because other volunteers, they might not just be working for that specific party or that specific candidate. They might also be volunteers and have their own businesses and other things. And so I do think that when we talk about how important it is to get involved with some of these campaigns, well, there's all kinds of different advantages. So now, Dillon, if you would tell the students, let's just say they are interested in volunteering, where do you think is the best place for them to start if they are not really sure, or if they don't specifically have a candidate they want to support, maybe more of a party?
So that's a great question. So if you're thinking, if the students are listening to this, which I hope that they are, one of the first things I would say that that you should do, if you're not really sure where you fall on the political spectrum, maybe you might fall in the middle. Maybe you might be a centrist or a moderate or an independent, all of which are fairly much the same. Or maybe you're a Democrat, maybe you're a Republican, more liberal or conservative, whatever it may be. Maybe you're a libertarian. I could go on. But the best place to start is to really focus and read about the issues, and then what I would say, take a little political quiz. Okay.
I actually use isidewith.org. There are several of them out there.
Absolutely.
On the very first day of Media and Politics, we get out the computer, we go to isidewith.org, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that thought they were the Democrat and ended up a little bit more on the Republican side, vice versa, or found people who thought that they were Democrat, ended up being more identified with the Green Party or Libertarian Party. So, I mean, it's very interesting. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of our younger students have never really thought about some of these issues to the level. You know, you think of the major issues with being, on one side or the other, whether it's your stance on abortion or gun control or the heavy hitters. There's a lot more that goes into it than that.
Oh, my goodness, sure.
So taking a quiz, I think, is an excellent idea. And then really, I would imagine just contacting their local branch of their, the Democratic Party office. And I think that you could do a lot worse than coming out of college and having on your resume that you worked for the Democratic or Republican Party or any other of the parties that are out there. Now, obviously, the general election coming up on November the 7th, 2017. What are you doing for the students to promote voting here on and off campus?
Absolutely. I will tell you, if I could just add to the previous
Certainly.
statements. One thing about getting involved, so really digging into the issues, or just doing a little bit of a survey, finding out where your stance is on policy and politics, and what political party you might be in or what your affiliation. So really dig into that and find that out, and then maybe take that political quiz, whatever website that is, as long as it's credible, and really make sure that you are falling in correct line with your thoughts. But I want to mention this one thing. Many people say, "Oh, well, my family is Republican. Oh, well, my family is Democratic." Well, I've come from a long line of independents. Okay, I just want to let the students know that that is fine. There is nothing wrong with that. But when you come to college, you start to find yourself and who you want to be, and you can also find your own politics. So I highly encourage all students you do not have to be in the long line of Republicans or Democrats or independent thinkers. You can be who you want to be. You can be who you want to be and pick the aisle that you want to pick. Or you could be right down the middle. Okay, so part of coming to college is freeing yourself and liberating the mind. And so I think liberating the mind politically, as we're talking about this now, is so important. So if you can do that, you don't have to be what your parents want you to be. You be what you want to be. Okay. To answer your question, a couple of different things. So our office, the Office of Residence Life, is going to be doing what we did last term, with hopefully a little bit more. But we're going to be putting out some flyers as to, hey, here's some places where you can find the different types of candidates. Here is how you get a hold of the Democratic and Republican Party. And if you're thinking that you're an independent, here are some policy issues, and here are some organizations where you can become a part of something that's more independent if you're not on one side or the other. Also, we're going to be sending out some email blasts when it comes close to election season. So really getting to know the candidates and getting to know that type of stuff, getting to know the political party, and then some important dates and all that kind of stuff. We're going to be doing that. I also hope to have two different forums. Where we're going to have them, I don't know, maybe room 200, maybe the theater, depending on the amount of people that we're looking at getting. But talking about the importance of politics and actually having maybe like a common area, something like that. I've been talking to Adrian about that. I think that's so important. So have one as more of a kind of Q&A and a little bit of information, and then another like workshop. I really like to do a little workshop. I think that would be beneficial.
Absolutely.
I don't care if 5 people come or 10 people come, but I think that would be fun. So that's what I have planned.
And that's fantastic. I'm so glad that you are taking the initiative to at least try to inspire our students to vote. Now, one very important element that we must make sure that all the students know, especially for our new students, unless you are registered to vote with the Central Penn address, you would have to vote in your home location. Okay. Now, for future reference, obviously it can't happen this year because the deadline has since passed. But for future reference, if you would like to vote in this area, you can simply do a change of address on the Pennsylvania voter registration website. So that's some very important element that I wanted to point out. I don't want students to go to the polls to vote here if they are not able to and are not registered with this address, because unfortunately they will not be able to do so. Now, it did kind of mess us up a little bit because we came right back to term with the new students like 2 days before the registration, but obviously that happens to us all the time. So I think next year, maybe over the summer, we'll make a stronger push to get this outreach out to our students. All right, we're going to switch gears here momentarily. And Dillon, before we move on, thank you so much for everything that you're doing to try to inspire our students to vote and enter the civic process. So we're going to switch gears here a little bit. And my question is this. Why do you believe that voter turnout is so low in non-presidential elections? And according to a Pew Research study, in 2012, the voter turnout was 54% for the presidential election, but in 2014, the midterm election only had 37%. So when you think about it, I'm curious why people only go out and vote for president, or obviously a fairly decent size, a fairly decent amount of people only go out and vote for president and don't vote in the other elections. An election like this that is neither. I would be interested to see how the numbers change. But why do you think voter turnout is so low in non-presidential or even non-midterm elections?
Sure, great question. So for a while, I taught GED courses, and I taught social studies, government, civics, economics, all this kind of stuff. And there was a whole chapter about this. Why don't people vote outside of presidential elections? Because it's a big issue here in our country. I think there's a couple things from just a little bit, and I am not a expert on this, but I'm just giving some offerings up of what I have learned throughout the years. Couple of things. Many people in this country have been brought up to think of the president as this wonderful person that it leads the country, very ceremonial, but actually has a lot of power when they really don't. They have somewhat of power, but they don't. And I also think that if you were to poll, they did a poll a couple of years ago. Pew Research actually did it, and they said, does the president vote on laws? And there was an outrageous amount of people that said, oh, yes, of course they vote on laws. Well, the president doesn't vote on laws. You and I both know that, and many others know that. But there's this idea that the president can do things that he or she really can't do constitutionally. There's a kind of a misunderstanding of what the president actually stands for. That's one of the issues that we face. And I think that goes back to could be some bad civic education, some bad government education.
From a communications perspective, one of the things that I talked about with this specific question has to do with how much media coverage these positions have. Now, many, obviously, we're watching some of our local channels, but a lot of people who do follow this type of thing, maybe you're watching CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, you're never going to see, if maybe for a second, but almost never, even our state governor is coming up next year. You're not going to see any of that on CNN. Why? Because 49 other states don't care. So when we're talking about national elections, to be perfectly honest with you, the President of the United States is one of the few things that the entire country votes on. So they don't want to sort of pigeonhole themselves into, okay, only people from Pennsylvania are going to care about this subject. So by that rationale, I don't think that we, as a whole society, and I like to, fancy myself as being relatively educated as far as this goes, I struggle to find information on what's coming up on our ballot here in, less than a couple of weeks. And that's problematic to me. And I think that that's part of it. I think that, people don't just want to go in and just vote for people because that's what party they are. They want to be more educated. But as I was saying to you before the show, we were both trying to do some prep work for this. It was very difficult to even find what we were going to be voting for outside of our local area.
Sure. Two people that are very passionate about this and many others as well. It's very, very difficult to actually, if you want to try to get involved in this, you do a simple Google search and you're like, oh my goodness, where am I going here? What am I going to find? One of the really interesting things, not to add this, and I'm not advocating for this at all, but I'm just saying in other countries it does work. In a lot of places in Europe and in Canada and such places, they all have publicly financed elections, which also come with certain websites that you can go on and find everything you want to know, within reason, obviously, about the candidate, what political party they are, where they stand, how their campaign finances, all this type of stuff. In this country, obviously, it's a little different because we don't have public financing. Which I won't comment on, but I think that's one of the issues and reasons is we have to kind of do our own homework, which isn't bad, but it's kind of difficult sometimes when you can't really find things. You kind of have to do a lot of digging.
And I mean, to be perfectly honest, I spent much of the morning just trying to find a comprehensive list of who was on the ballot, which is, I mean, to me, somewhat problematic. All right, a second question I have, and again, we're not going to get in on any commentary about our current president. Again, we'll leave that for the others in this industry who are paid to research such things. However, no matter how you feel about our current president, Donald Trump, you can at least say that it seems like a lot more people are at least a little bit more actively involved in the office of the president. By that rationale, do you think that with Trump after his first year in office, well, we're not even there yet, we're about 9 months in, do you think that even though we're not even in a midterm election, just his presence is going to get more people out to the polls, even in sort of a relatively mundane election?
Absolutely. So I think in both ways, as I said on the last podcast, which was almost near right after the election, I said that the election was quite brutal for some and quite happy for others. So I think that President Trump, not to talk either way about him, but he has a very, I think we could say, big personality. So whether you like him or you don't like him, he has done a lot of things in almost his first year in office for people that voted for him that they are going to elect or re-elect Republicans to help him out. While at the same time, he has done a lot of things to tick off a lot of people on the other side. And so the articles are out, the polling is out that this might be a decent year for Democrats, So it really depends on how the president is acting, and this is, I think, anybody would say without any disrespect to the presidency or the actual president himself. This presidency and President Trump is very different from what we have ever had in modern times. So he's playing to his base. He's sticking to his base. Which is also alarming many people on the other side to rally around their policies, their thoughts, their movements, and say, hey, the legislature is really where it's at. The presidency, yes, is one thing, but the legislation, passing legislation, it's where it's at. And really, the Supreme Court, too. I mean, we have to think about that, too. But these people that we elect to represent us on our behalf. So important. So important.
One final question I have, and then we will. This will definitely have to be continued on some of these things because we didn't quite get to as far as we'd hoped. I read an article. This is coming from the Providence Journal in September of 2017, and the headline is, "Should the United States move Election Day from a Tuesday to the weekend?" This legislation was introduced by Jack Reed and Sheldon Whitehouse as well as 6 other Democratic and Independent senators, trying to potentially introduce legislation that would switch Election Day from a Tuesday to a Saturday or Sunday. To be honest with you, we have right here something, and this goes back and talks a little bit about why Tuesday first came into play. Quote, "The Tuesday designation goes back to the mid-19th century when Congress decided to standardize federal election day throughout the country and choose a day that was most convenient for farmers when traveling by horse and buggy to make it to the polls," end quote. Now, what is your opinion on the potential of moving Election Day from a Tuesday to, let's say, a Saturday?
Well, let me just say that on my mom's side of my family, I come from a long line of farmers.
As do I.
So I support farmers, but as the country has grown and progressed, I think we're moving away from an agrarian society of everything designated to farmers, whether it's elections or whether it's daylight savings time. So I think
which wasn't even for farmers.
Exactly. So I mean, we have all these types of things that have helped certain people throughout the years, and it's really we really need to progress. Personal opinion, but
You'd also mentioned in our pre-show meeting that when Election Day happens to be in an area that's seeing poor weather, like rain, that can dramatically affect voter turnout. That was very surprising. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
sure, yeah. So statistics have shown on many types of statistics have shown that weather is a huge deal when it comes to elections, and especially rain. And this isn't some made-up nonsense. It's really, I mean, these are people in political statistics and political polling that have stated in surveys that they clearly did not go out to vote. They were intending to go out to vote, but they did not go out to vote because of the rain. Some of these are in higher. The numbers are higher in elderly people, which are also people that actually a category of people that really vote. So if there's bad weather, you can guarantee that your election results are going to be lower.
I'm going to send you out of here with this. How far are we away from an internet voting system?
I think with the current administration and with some other things, I think we're a little far ways out.
Well, and I mean, certainly with the ability to hack and things like that. But on one hand, we want more people to come out. But on the other hand, we continue to make it more difficult for people to get out. So there's got to be something in the middle. There's got to be some middle ground to make it easier, whether that is making it on Saturday, whether maybe 30 years from now it is done online. I don't know the answers, or else I would probably be doing a political podcast.
I think Sheldon Whitehouse, if anybody knows anything about Sheldon Whitehouse, Jack Reed is also a very good senator from Rhode Island, but Sheldon Whitehouse, if you are at all interested in climate change or global warming, he is top notch. I mean, the guy is a brain on this, and he's a much valued person in the United States Senate. And especially Rhode Island, who's seeing a lot of climate change. But I have to pander my favor to him. I think that, on the weekends, even though some people do work on Saturdays, usually it's a half a day, if not maybe a full day or something like that, but a lot less people work. I think it would be a lot more beneficial. I think, as well as you, I think we just need to push people to get out and vote, regardless of the aisle. Again, like you always say, and I always say, I don't care who you vote for. I just want you to vote, and I want you to vote well and really be well educated, because it's so important to both yourself and your community. So get out and vote. Even if it's raining, go out and vote.
Well, Dillon, I just want to thank you so very much for stopping by the Nightly News Podcast. We'll have you back again during the winter term whenever we'll do something special in the media and politics class. But guys, keep an eye out for all of Dillon's events, and I will and the Nightly News will forward along any information once things get confirmed as far as a common hour or workshop, or if nothing else, share some of the documents that Dillon shares as well with all the students. So, Dillon, thank you very much for spending the time with the Nightly News Podcast today.
Paul, thanks so much. Take care.
It's always a pleasure, my friend.